today it's all about the Tesla Cybertruck. Is it going to be a revolution for pickup trucks, or is it going to, kind of just end up in the automotive graveyard? And that,
Yeah, it's funny. The Cybertruck first came out. Uh, it seemed like just about everyone was ready to just like ditch their gas guzzlers. I mean, millions of pre-orders, a totally new design, pure hype.
yeah, totally. It's been interesting though lately. It seems like maybe things are, I don't know, slowing down a bit. Like Tesla is offering discounts now, which is pretty wild considering like in the beginning people were paying,
Yeah.
crazy markups just to snag one.
Right. Yeah, it makes you wonder if maybe that demand just isn't as strong as Tesla thought it would be. Or maybe,
Yeah.
they're feeling the heat from some of the other electric trucks out there, like the Ford Lightning or the Rivian.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's dig into the price for a sec. The Cybertruck's price has gone up a lot since it was first announced, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. That transcript you sent, it said the starting price was supposed to be like $40,000,
Yeah.
but now it's more like 80.
Wow.
Of course, we've had inflation and all that,
Right.
but that's still a huge jump.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like double. And speaking of things that haven't quite lived up to the hype, what about the Cybertruck's range? Didn't Tesla initially promise like 500 miles on a single charge?
It did, yeah. That was a big selling point for a lot of people. But from what we know now, it seems like it's falling short of that goal.
Yeah.
And that could be a real problem for potential buyers, especially people who tow a lot or need to drive long distances. Range anxiety is a real thing.
Yeah, no doubt. So we've got, some price increases, range concerns, and now these discounts. But to really see what's going on, I think we need to look at the sales figures. Our sources mentioned something like 40,000 Cybertrucks sold in 2024.
Okay.
So is that good or bad for a brand new vehicle?
That's a good question. And the answer is it's complicated. I mean, 40,000 isn't a small number, but it's definitely less than what a lot of analysts were predicting, especially considering those huge pre-order numbers we talked about.
Right, right. And how does that compare to the competition? Like, how did it do against the Ford F-150 Lightning and the Rivian?
Well, one interesting thing the article mentioned is that Tesla actually outsold the Ford Lightning in 2024, which is kind of surprising when you think about it, because the Cybertruck is more expensive.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It could mean that the Tesla brand and their loyal customer base are still a big force in the EV market.
Yeah, that makes sense. But there's also this quote in the transcript from an analyst. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that basically all the initial excitement and hype for the Cybertruck has kind of fizzled out. Is that a fair assessment? It's still a pretty new vehicle, right?
I mean, it is true. It's still pretty early. 1 year isn't really enough time to tell if a vehicle is going to be successful in the long run. But that analyst's comment does kind of make you think. Like, if the excitement really has died down, what does that mean for the Cybertruck going forward? Will it just be for, like, diehard Tesla fans, or can it actually break into, like, the mainstream truck market?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. The transcript also talked about some potential upgrades that Tesla might have planned for the Cybertruck. Did anything in there jump out at you?
Yeah, actually. There was that thing about increasing the battery size, which could actually solve those range issues we were talking about. What if Tesla actually hits that 500-mile goal?
Yeah.
Or even goes beyond it? I mean, that would be a huge deal, especially for those who use their truck for towing or long trips.
Yeah, I can see that being a big selling point. But wouldn't a bigger battery make the Cybertruck even more expensive?
Right, that's true. But you got to remember how fast battery technology is advancing. Battery prices have been dropping steadily, and Tesla is like leading the charge on that front. So they might be able to balance out some of that extra cost with like cheaper, more efficient batteries.
Oh, that's a good point. And we can't forget about software updates either. Tesla's always pushing those out, which can improve performance and add new features.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Software updates could definitely play a big role. Who knows, maybe an update could even give the range a little boost.
Wow, that's crazy to think about. So it's like the truck could just keep getting better and better over time. It makes you wonder about the folks who bought the Cybertruck like right out of the gate.
Yes.
Based on those initial promises, are they going to feel kind of left behind if Tesla rolls out all these big improvements down the line?
That's a valid concern. I mean, Tesla's always been a company that pushes boundaries, and
Yeah.
sometimes that means things change really quickly. But they also have a pretty good track record of keeping their customers happy.
Yeah.
Even those who bought like earlier versions of their cars. So
Yeah.
guess we'll see how they handle that with the Cybertruck.
Yeah. It's interesting how Tesla operates on such a different timeline than traditional automakers. It's like they're constantly innovating and updating, even after a vehicle's already out on the market.
Yeah, it's a very different approach. It can be both exciting and frustrating for consumers. On one hand, your car could always be getting better. But on the other hand, you might feel like you're always playing catch up.
It's like you're buying into a constantly evolving ecosystem
Right.
rather than just like a vehicle. So, big picture, we've talked about the initial hype, the demand maybe cooling down a bit, the price hikes, the range concerns, the competition, and even all those potential future upgrades. Based on all that, do you think the Cybertruck is living up to its initial potential?
Ugh, that's a tough one. I don't think we can really say for sure whether it's a success or failure just yet. There are definitely challenges,
Yeah.
but there's also a lot of potential.
I agree. I think that's what makes this whole conversation so fascinating. The Cybertruck is just such a polarizing vehicle. People either love it or hate it.
It definitely gets people talking. And I think that's partly because of the wild design, but it's also because it really represents a shift in the whole automotive world. The Cybertruck is a symbol of that electric revolution. And whether it ultimately succeeds or fails, it's going to leave its mark on the industry.
Totally agree. Speaking of its mark, let's talk about how the Cybertruck's being perceived out in the real world. One thing that jumped out at me in the article was this idea that you see Rivian R1Ts and Ford Lightnings actually being used, you know, for work and play.
Yeah.
But Cybertrucks are more like showboats.
Oh, yeah. I saw that too. If that's true. It could mean that people see the Cybertruck more as like a status symbol, unless as an actual work truck, which for a vehicle that's supposed to be like the ultimate utility machine could be a problem.
Yeah, I'm curious to get your take on that. Why do you think the Cybertruck has that reputation? Like, why is it seen as more of a showpiece than a work truck?
Well, I think part of it's got to be the design. It's so different and futuristic that it just screams, look at me. It's like driving around in a concept car from the future.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't blend in. But do you think it's more than just the looks? Could it be something about like what it can or can't do that's feeding into this perception?
It's possible. Those range concerns we talked about might be playing a role. If people aren't sure if the Cybertruck can actually go the distance, especially when it's towing or carrying a heavy load, they might be less likely to use it for those things.
Right. And maybe. There's still some skepticism about electric trucks in general. Some people might not be ready to accept the idea of an electric pickup truck as a real work vehicle.
Yeah, I think that's fair. There's definitely a learning curve when it comes to electric vehicles. And trucks are no different. People are used to the power and reliability of gas-powered trucks. So it might take some time for them to fully embrace the electric alternative.
Yeah, that makes sense. But, the fact that we're even having this conversation shows how far electric vehicles have come. I mean, just a few years ago, the idea of an electric pickup truck was practically a joke. And now we've got multiple options on the market.
It's amazing how fast things are changing. And the Cybertruck. Whether you love it or hate it, it's been a big part of pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about performance, potential, and perception. But there's one more crucial piece we haven't really dug into yet: the competition. Let's look at how the Cybertruck stacks up against its rivals in the electric truck market.
Yeah, let's do it. We can't talk about the Cybertruck without mentioning the Ford F-150 Lightning. It's been a massive hit for Ford, and it's captured a big chunk of that electric truck market.
From what I've seen, it seems like the Lightning's appealing to a more traditional truck buyer. Someone who wants that familiar F-150 feel and capability, but with the benefits of electric power.
That's a good point. The Lightning is building on Ford's decades of experience making tough, reliable trucks. And they've done a good job of incorporating that electric tech into their classic design.
It's a smart strategy, and it seems to be working for them. Their sales numbers have been really solid.
Yeah, they have. It's a real win for Ford. And it shows that there's a real demand for electric trucks, even among buyers who might have been on the fence before.
Okay, and then there's the Rivian R1T, which seems to be going after a slightly different crowd than the Cybertruck and the Lightning. What are your thoughts on that one?
The R1T is a cool truck. It's definitely more focused on adventure, with a big emphasis on off-roading and outdoorsy stuff. It also feels more luxurious than the Lightning, but it's also pricier.
Yeah, I've seen some videos of it handling some pretty intense terrain. Looks like they nailed the whole off-roading aspect.
They definitely did. And their marketing has been really smart too, targeting outdoor enthusiasts and early adopters, which seems to be working. The R1T has gotten a ton of buzz and positive reviews.
So we've got three very different electric trucks here, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. The Cybertruck, the Lightning, and the R1T. It's awesome to see this much variety in such a new market.
I know, right? And I think this is just the beginning. As electric vehicle tech keeps getting better, we're going to see even more innovation and different types of trucks.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch it all unfold. But it makes you wonder, what are the key things that will determine if an electric truck ultimately succeeds or fails?
Hmm, that's a great question. I think it comes down to a few key things. Range and charging infrastructure are probably the biggest ones. People need to feel confident they can actually go the distance in an electric truck without worrying about running out of battery. And that means having lots of charging stations around, especially for people who drive long distances or tow heavy stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. Especially for people who rely on their trucks for work.
Exactly. Then there's the whole practicality thing. Can an electric truck actually do everything a gas-powered truck can do? Can it tow the same amount? Can it handle rough terrain?
That's a good point. I mean, people use their trucks for way more than just getting around. They're tools, workhorses, and sometimes even like an extension of their personality.
You're right. That's why it's so important for these electric truck companies to really understand their customers and what they need from a truck. It's not just about swapping out the engine for a battery. It's about creating a vehicle that fits the needs and expectations of truck owners.
Totally. And we can't forget about price. Electric trucks are still pretty expensive,
Yeah.
especially compared to gas-powered trucks. Hopefully, as battery tech gets better and production ramps up, we'll see those prices come down. But right now, price is still a big obstacle for a lot of people.
For sure. Affordability is going to be huge for getting more people to buy electric trucks. And that's where things like government incentives and tax breaks can help. And we've already seen how those have boosted electric car sales. And I think we'll see the same thing happen with electric trucks.
So it seems like we're still in the early days of the electric truck revolution. There's a lot of exciting stuff happening, but there are still some hurdles to overcome.
Definitely. It's a fast-moving landscape.
Yep.
And it's going to be really interesting to see how it all shakes out over the next few years.
Yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. I wonder which of these trucks, if any, will end up becoming the big winner.
It's hard to say right now, but one thing's for sure. The competition is only getting tougher. And that's good news for people who want to buy these trucks.
Totally. More choices, more innovation, and hopefully some cheaper electric trucks down the road. We started off asking if the Cybertruck was a flop or the future, and I think it's safe to say it's way too early to tell.
I agree. I mean, we've seen some bumps in the road, like the discounts and those range issues, but Tesla has a knack for, shaking things up, and they usually figure things out.
Right. It goes back to what you said earlier about Tesla being on a different timeline. Maybe we shouldn't be judging the Cybertruck by the same standards as like traditional car companies.
Yeah, maybe they're playing the long game, focusing on innovation and, disrupting the whole industry. But whether that leads to success for the Cybertruck, only time will tell.
Well, to our listener who sent us these sources, we hope this deep dive has given you a lot to think about.
We've covered the hype, the reality, and the potential of the Cybertruck. But now we want to hear from you. What do you think?
Is the Cybertruck going to change the game, or will it just be a cool footnote in automotive history? Keep digging, keep learning, and let us know what you find out. Until next time on The Deep Dive.